Welcome to the Dumb Leaders Podcast. We learn the lessons of lousy leaders.
Don't mock. I'm not a fool. Don't mock. I'm not a fool.
I just think that would be fun.
Hey there, it's Tony Curl here, and welcome to the Dumb Leaders Podcast. We're talking episode 110, and the title of the podcast is called Why Are We Celebrating the Removal of Hope? And it's very clearly, this is an opinion piece. So as with everything, if you don't want to hear my opinion around this, that's okay. Because we often talk about, the lessons of leadership and whatnot. But there are some real lessons here. So it's about critical thinking. It's about making your own choices and your own decisions. And I think that's really, really important, because one of the things that I know at the moment is that the world is deeply hurt. We are hurting. Everyone's hurting, whether you're whatever side of politics you're on, whatever country you're in, there is hurt. And COVID in so many ways has created much greater impact socially than anyone could ever have imagined. And in many ways, social issues, social justices have been magnified during the COVID crisis. Now, from an economic sense, we've got larger companies that seem to have been remarkably ineffective. In fact, many of them have increased their profits and market shares. That's been the norm. It's the norm rather than the exception. Governments and bureaucrats, or people that work within government, have been largely untouched. They've pocketed their salaries while locking down populations and countries. While small and medium enterprises have been hardest hit, industries have battled through. Some of them have come through largely unscathed, while industries like tourism and hospitality have been, decimated. They're just shadows of the former industries that they were. And during this time, the social justice messaging has amplified, and the celebration of oppression has magnified. And this is the real challenge for me, is that, we have a real narrative out there telling certain pockets of the population that they've been oppressed, and there's systematic racism and all of this stuff. And I've got no doubt that in previous history, where we are now as a society is well advanced on where we were. And that's what we're not celebrating. We're not celebrating the changes, the movements, the improvements right throughout our society. We're focusing back on hurt from, in some cases, hundreds of years ago. And we're manifesting that hurt within the current population, which is really challenging. We celebrate oppression, and I think that is just really, really, it's a negative way to look at the world as we see today. The narrative is open to some in our population telling human beings that they're inferior, and where they are in life is due to privilege and the system. And I really am challenged by that, because I can understand where the narrative comes from, and I understand that there's pockets of demographics within most countries in the world that are just poorer or less resourced than other pockets. But the opportunities still exist for those pockets not to play the victim, but to actually be the champions of their own success. Fundamentally, we've got white teachers, we've got white politicians, teachers, politicians, companies, bureaucrats, you name it. We've got white people being really successful in telling black people that they're oppressed. We've got people telling successful black or people of color, we've got successful people being told that they are slaves and they're slaves to the white man. It's defying my head. So instead of celebrating the hard work, intelligence and resilience, we shame some of these most successful, intelligent people of colour that are actually got an opposing view to the narrative. And that's really challenging. We've got intelligent people being told they're pawns to the white man, pawns to white privilege, and that they're mouthpieces, because they're contradicting, or they're speaking out against the narrative that they don't believe in, and a narrative that they have shared, that they've been able to be successful within this world. You know, one of the key things that I always remember when I was younger and an early leader is that you really cannot challenge the system until you've mastered the system, right? So you need to be a success within the system for you to actually have any chance of shifting the system. And that's one of the things that we're not seeing. You know, these people that have been successful within the world as we know it today, they should be the ones leading the charge, but they're not, because they're fighting against what they see as a false narrative, and what many would see as a false narrative. We've got, you know, in many ways we've actually gone backwards in the world, because we've got things like Ivy League colleges having separate graduation ceremonies based on race. Now, where does that fit within the inclusive and diversity handbook? Because it just doesn't. It just doesn't. We've got people of colour predominantly being told by white people that they're unable to obtain, that they are less skilled to obtain things like government IDs. They're less likely to be computer literate. And even in education now, we're talking about race, and we're talking about highlighting the difference between race instead of the potential of each and every person, which is fundamentally how we start to breed further and future success, by helping people see the potential of what they've got, not harbouring them in the guilt and the pain of the past. The narrative is actually harbouring hope on a system change, and telling people that they're oppressed because of skin colour, instead of telling people they can work towards fulfilling their own potential. Ultimately, this narrative will set us all up for fail, and I'm really at loss here to see what the benefit's going to be. Now, yes, the system certainly has some failings, and I'm certainly not sitting here talking about being an advocate for the system, because the system is challenging, but it is in many cases what it is, and where it is far removed from where it was. But when the only hope that you're giving people is system change and things like retribution payments, for example, some sort of justice for the pain of the past, we're really setting those people up to fail. You know, the pain that was exhibited in the past actually strengthened the resolve of those people who actually experienced it. The very people, and those very people chose to find joy within their lives and families, in those close, intimate relationships that we have with people. And in many ways that combated the pain that the world was being delivered to them. Now, at the end of the day, no one wants to see people having pain inflicted upon them. But as I've said, the world has come a long way from where it was. Yet today we've got people that are manifesting that pain, even though they personally have not experienced it to the depth and intensity of what it was felt in the past. It's just crazy. And we've started to get some really stupid beliefs. And I say stupid beliefs because, you know, it's just, it defies logic. Apparently, you know, one of those beliefs is apparently you cannot be racist to white people. Now, you know, once again, I'm just at a loss for that. Racism is racism, regardless whether it's black on white, black on Asian, Asian on white, white, whatever. Racism is racist. You know, we've got people of colour who are successfully discounting other people of colour, saying you don't speak for us, you're out there, you're Uncle Tom, or whatever the terminology that they like to use. And we actually had ESPN's Jalen Rose talk about white tokenism in respect of Kevin Love, the token white guy. And, you know, Rose went on to say that the USA didn't have the courage to send an all-black team to the Olympics. Yet the USA had the courage to send an all-black team to the Olympics in 2016. So who's being divisive here? And one of the questions that I really want you to think about, one of the things that I really want you to think about, this is not about taking my opinion or anyone's opinion as gospel. Be critical in your own thinking and ask yourself who is doing this. Ask yourself who is doing this. Now, Tom McDonald's created a viral hit. He's a US rapper, and he's created this viral hit called Snowflakes, and it's been largely ignored by the media and the music reporting world. But fundamentally, this has got like millions and millions and millions of streams. And when you actually dive into some of the words that McDonald talks through, now I'm not the world's biggest rap fan, but I actually don't mind the beat and the music behind this song as well as some of the lyrics. But I'm just going to recite some of the lyrics that McDonald speaks to. He says in the song, black folks and white folks divided by the news. How true is that? How true is that? We are divided by whatever news channel that we're listening to, whatever narrative that's being provided to us. But we're all the same. We are red, white, and blue. Now, it gets a bit critical in this whole verse, but it's really interesting to listen to it and look at it with open eyes. So if you're black, your life matters. You're supposed to embrace it. If you're rich and you're smart, then you're probably Asian. If you're gay, then you're brave. All that I'm okay with. So he's saying quite open, I'm okay with every little thing that I've just said. So if you're black, your life matters. You're supposed to embrace it. If you're rich and you're smart, then you're probably Asian. If you're gay, then you're brave. All that I'm okay with. But if you're white, the stereotype is you are a racist. Blaming capitalism like that's the reason things are tough when you tweet from an iPhone and you sip on a Starbucks, you're supporting what you stand against. You don't think you are. And then he talks about some sort of, I'm imagining a drug, some addict don't donate money to pharma. But then the next words are really relevant. Damn dog, we're all afraid to speak the truth, and the more afraid we get, the more the hate with the ones who do. So truth is always how you see it. So whatever your view on the world is, that's your truth. And there's a difference between facts and truth, a very clear difference. And the truth is, as I said, how you see it. So, but there are some facts. But, one of the things I've always been told to follow the money. And this is where I really want you to get critical. And I'm not suggesting anything in relation to this. But when we've got white politicians and we've got white bureaucrats and we've got, predominantly white teachers also, you go to a Black Lives Matter rally, not that I have, but if you go to one, there is a large proportion of white sympathisers, white supporters. And it's great to be showing support for marginalised people. I 100% agree. But we've got this it's almost like people are feeling like because of their own personal beliefs that they want to go and support it. And that's okay. But when we're looking at who is actually driving the narrative, I really want you to think about the money. So when you think, and Forbes has talked about some of this, so all of this is publicly available information. I'm not sharing untruths. I'm not sharing facts. I've got sources for all of this, and I'll share the sources as I go through it. But Joe Biden at the moment has an $8 million net worth. But somehow in between the 4 years of Trump, he earns $17.3 million. Now, I'm in no way, shape or form saying it's illegal to make money, but there's no way in the world that Joe Biden should be the voice for equality within the community, because he's largely divorced from the community and the pain. You look at even Kamala Harris; she's worth $7 million, and these are from Forbes. These figures are from Forbes, but that's largely off the back of her partner, Nancy Pelosi, $114 million, and there are reports that she's worth as high as $195 million. That's been debunked. But at the end of the day, if you've got $114 million, it's really hard to identify or to and it's really easy to be able to see that you're actually benefiting from the narrative. Think about that. So according to CNN and Forbes, and this is also really, really interesting, in 2016, Trump, like Trump, hate Trump, at the end of the day, he was a president for 4 years, and, there's some facts and figures that support some of the good things that he's done, and then there's a narrative and some emotions of the bad things that he's done. But in 2016, Trump was estimated net worth at $3.7 billion. Yeah, I know it sort of pales into, it puts all those figures I just spoke about with some of the Democrats. It pales them into insignificance. But $3.7 billion, that's a lot of money. But he's been estimated that he's now only worth $2.5 billion. We all know he donated his salary during his presidency, but he dropped 1.2 billion in net worth. So yet the narrative about Trump was all about personal benefit. So where was that narrative coming from? Because the facts and the figures don't support that. So who are you listening to? Who are you listening to? Importantly, even when you work away from the leaders, right? The average salary for Congress, and I got this from Wikipedia, and even it says this needs to be updated, is about 174, the minimum salary, 174,000 for a US congressperson, and going up to roughly 300,000. That was figures that were a bit dated, so Wikipedia themselves are even saying that needs to be updated. But think about this, more than half of those in Congress are millionaires. Think about that. And this is, that data comes from the lawmakers' most recent financial disclosures. So every year they have to make financial disclosures. The median net worth of members of Congress who filed disclosures last year is just over $1 million. Just over $1 million. So these are the people that are creating the narrative, right? It's not all rosy. Some of them actually report a negative net worth, and there are a few that don't necessarily benefit. But hey, it's the average is really quite frightening. The other thing that I really want you to be interested in to research, because this is all about being critical thinking in where is the narrative coming from, right? Because the narrative in many cases is never one that you think is going to help you. No matter where you are, the narrative, there is always, unfortunately, there is always self-interest. So when you look at, and once again, this is from Wikipedia, where we've had average wealth, the average net worth of individuals in Congress who have gained money while they've been in Congress. So the figures that I'm going to share with you are 2008 to 2018, right? So once again, you're in Congress, you're earning a salary of 174,000 to maybe 300,000. Yet there is a Democrat, and I won't, it's publicly available. I'll put the names to it. So Grace Napolitano from California, Democrat. Her net worth grew from 2008, $8,000 to a net worth of $913,000 over 10 years. So, if she's been a smart saver, that one's probably likely, right? Let's have a look at Democrat, California, Judy Chu. She went from 92,000 net worth in 2008 to 7 million. Big. You look at Pete Olson, he's a Republican from Texas, 85,000 net worth to 5.6 mil. You look at Colin Peterson, Democrat from, I'm presuming it's Minnesota, 123,000 to 4.2 mil. Shelley Pingree, Democrat, Maine, 442,000 to 9.9 million. Brett Stevens, Republican from KY, I'm not sure what state that is, 421 to 7.6 million. We've got Rob Whitman, Republican from VA, 133 to 1.6. We've got Rob Bishop. Now, this one I could probably it highlights an increase, but it's not a major increase. We've got Rob Bishop 3,500 to 40,000, so that one's in the realms of possibility. You're looking at Martin Heinrich, who's Democrat in NM. He goes from 27,000 to 309, and you've got Bernice Johnson, who's going from 57,000 to 615. Now, some of them are in the realms of possibility based on what they've earned, right? So I'm not saying that they're all, but some of those that have gone from like 85,000 to 5.6 or 92,000 to $7.7 million, surely that just raises some real cloud around who's benefiting from the narrative. Now, out of those top 10, there was 6 Democrats and 4 Republicans. So, it's certainly not party specific, but there is a major thing that the people in power are the ones that seem to be benefiting from the narrative. So just be really, 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 really clear with your critical thinking. Don't just accept that what you're being fed is the truth. Go look, be critical, but think about it. See, because I believe that instead of a narrative where we're removing hope or we're focusing the hope on system, demolishing the system and starting again, everyone has the chance. Everyone has the potential to be the very best that they can be. So don't ever let anyone tell you it's impossible for you to achieve what you would like to achieve. You have the ability, you have the conscious thought, you have the opportunity to get out there and make it work for you. The system's not perfect. We know that. But please ask yourself, who are the ones that are doing the oppressing? Hey, it's Tony here. Thanks for tuning in to this week's episode of the Dumb Leader Podcast. A little bit different. Let's get back next week to talking about leadership lessons, or I might talk about some statistics out of the COVID-19 disaster. Either way, I hope you tune in. Thanks for listening. Bye for now.
Don't mock. I'm not a fool. And people who know me personally know that I am not a fool. But I won't get into the details of those. I just want people to realize that I'm not a fool. Don't mock. I'm not a fool. Don't mock. I'm not a fool.